I heard my sister scream before I saw the coffee hit her face. Scalding, black, and flung by Karen, our HOA's resident dictator, who stood there grinning like she'd won a war. The Boise Bean coffee shop went dead quiet, save for the hiss of the espresso machine and my pulse hammering in my ears. My sister, Emily, 35 and tougher than most, clutched her cheek, her eyes wide with shock, not pain, though the way that steam curled off her skin told me it hurt like hell. Karen, mid-50s, perm tight as her grip on our cul-de-sac, loomed over the table, empty cup in hand, ranting about disrespect. Two strangers in plain clothes. Later I'd learn they were detectives. Sat frozen, their lattes untouched, jaws practically on the floor. Me? I was halfway across the shop, my own coffee cooling on the counter, fists balled before I even knew why. The air stank of burnt beans and bad blood. This wasn't just a tantrum. Karen had been gunning for us for years. I'm James, 48. A mechanic who'd rather wrench a busted carburetor than deal with people like Karen. I fix things, engines, leaks, the occasional neighbor's lawnmower when they're desperate. But Karen? She's the kind of broken you can't fix, only outlast. Or outsmart. That day, March 12, 2025, in a strip mall coffee shop off Overland Road, I knew she'd crossed a line. Emily wasn't just my kid sister. She was the one who'd call me out for leaving dishes in the sink, but still show up with beer when my shop had a slow month. Seeing her dripping with Karen's decoff rage lit something in me. Part fury, part clarity. This wasn't random. Karen didn't just wake up and decide to play barista from hell. I pushed through the crowd, mostly retirees and remote workers glued to laptops, and got to Emily. "You okay?" I asked, voice low, scanning her face. Red, blotchy, but no blisters. She nodded, brushing wet bangs from her eyes, trying to laugh it off. "Guess I pissed off the queen bee," she muttered. Classic Emily, downplaying to keep me calm. But I wasn't calm. Karen stood there, arms crossed, her floral blouse screaming, "I'd like to speak to your manager," louder than her voice ever could. She caught my glare and smirked, like she'd planned this. The detectives, Tom, grizzled with a cheap tie, and Laura, sharp-eyed, notepad out, finally stirred. "Ma'am," Tom started. "You want to explain why you just assaulted someone?" Karen waved him off. "She provoked me, sitting too close, acting entitled." Typical. Typical? That word stuck in my craw. If anyone was entitled, it was Karen, who'd turned our Boise neighborhood into her personal fiefdom. 3 years ago, she'd slithered onto the HOA board, and by last summer she was president, armed with a 47-page rulebook thicker than my shop's repair manual. I still had the $150 fine for my fence being 0.37 inches too tall, measured by her with a tape she probably blessed in some HOA ritual. Emily got hit worse. $75 for her dog's excessive barking, when all he did was yip at a squirrel. We'd laughed it off at first, but the fines piled up, each one a jab, like Karen was testing how much we'd take. So what set her off today? What made her go from passive-aggressive notes to weaponizing a $4 latte? "All right, guys, what's your take? Why'd Karen snap today? Drop your wildest guess in the comments. I'm betting it's more than Emily stealing her favorite table." I helped Emily to a chair, grabbing napkins to mop her shirt. The detectives were talking to Karen now, her voice climbing. Something about community standards. I tuned her out, focusing on Emily. "What happened?" I asked. She shrugged, wincing as she dabbed her cheek. "I was just here meeting those two." She nodded at the detectives. "They wanted to talk about some vandalism case." Karen walked in, saw me, and started muttering. Next thing I know, I'm wearing her coffee. Vandalism? That rang a bell. Someone had spray-painted "HOA sucks" on Karen's garage last month. Cops had been sniffing around. But Emily? She wasn't the type to tag property, unless you count her go-doffel stick-figure doodles. The detectives broke off from Karen, who was now fake-crying to a barista, probably angling for a free refill. Tom approached, badge clipped to his belt. "You her brother?" he asked. I nodded. "She okay?" Laura joined, eyeing Emily's face. Might want to get that checked, just in case. Emily waved it off. I'm fine. Just wet. I wasn't so sure. Coffee that hot could burn worse than it looked. And I'd seen enough shop accidents to know fine didn't always mean safe. But Emily's stubborn streak, same as mine, meant no ER unless she was half dead. Tom lowered his voice. We were meeting your sister about the vandalism on Ms. Thompson's property. Karen Thompson. Yeah, that's her full name, though I'd rather call her Headache Number 1. Emily was helping us with some leads, Laura added, glancing at Karen, who was now lecturing a teenager about napkin waste. Helping? My sister wasn't a snitch, but she'd always been the one to call out nonsense. Like when Karen tried charging our block $5,000 for emergency tree trimming that left every oak standing. I'd backed her up at that HOA meeting, reading the budget aloud while Karen turned purple. Was that it? Was this coffee stunt payback for us daring to question her throne? I stepped outside with Emily, the Idaho spring air cool against my neck. Karen was still inside, playing victim for anyone who'd listen. The detectives stayed, taking statements. I didn't buy her provoked crap for a second. Emily sitting too close? Please. Karen once fined me $200 for my truck's unauthorized parking when it was in my own driveway. She didn't need a reason, just an excuse. I thought back to the rumors I'd heard at Dave's barbecue last fall. Dave, our neighbor with the overpriced grill, had too many beers and let slip that Karen's HOA landscaping fund was fishy. $10? 000 for shrubs that looked like they came from a clearance rack. When I'd asked Karen about it, she'd shut me down with a smile that could curdle milk. Budgets are complex, James. Leave it to the board. Complex, my ass. I'd rebuilt a '67 Mustang from a pile of rust. I could handle a spreadsheet. Something was off, had been for months. The vandalism case, the detectives, now this coffee attack, it wasn't coincidence. Karen was covering something, and Emily was collateral. Maybe me too. I watched Emily sip water, her usual spark dimmed, and felt that old itch from my dad's garage days. He taught me to fix what's broken, no matter how greasy the job. Engines, sure. But people like Karen? They didn't fix easy. You had to take them apart, piece by smug piece. I said, we're not letting this slide. She looked up, half smiling. You gonna tow her like a bad Chevy? I grinned, but inside, I was dead serious. Karen wanted a war? Fine. I'd been turning wrenches my whole life. Time to crank hers. Whatever she was hiding, I'd find it. And when I did, she'd wish she'd stuck to Dekoff. 3 years ago, Karen turned our quiet cul-de-sac into a dictatorship, and I've got the $200 fine for my unapproved porch light to prove it. I'm James, the guy who'd rather rebuild a transmission than sit through an HOA meeting, but Karen Thompson made that impossible. Picture a woman who'd argue with a stop sign and win, her rulebook thicker than the Boise phone directory I haven't seen since '98. That's Karen, and after she doused my sister Emily with coffee at the Boise Bean last week, I knew her reign wasn't just annoying, it was personal. I stood in my garage, tools scattered, staring at the latest HOA notice taped to my door. $50 for excessive toolbox noise. Toolbox noise? I'd been asleep when she claimed it happened. The woman was unhinged, and I was done playing nice. Something bigger than her bad perm was brewing, and I was gonna find it. Karen didn't just wake up one day and decide to be the neighborhood's fun police. She rolled into Boise in 2022, fresh off what she called an early retirement from some HR gig back east. Early, my ass, nobody quits at 52 with that much venom unless they're dodging something. Dave, my neighbor with the overpriced grill, got chatty at his 4th of July bash last year. Between burgers and a third course, he let slip that Karen had a lawsuit tailing her. Something about workplace misconduct she'd weaseled out of. By the time she landed in our subdivision, she was all smiles and casseroles, cozying up to the HOA board faster than you can say, bylaws violation. 6 months later, she was president, and our street went from sleepy to surveillance state. Her first act? A 47-page community standards manifesto that made the DMV look chill. My porch light? Standard bulb? Nothing fancy. Got me that $200 fine because it wasn't energy efficient enough for her eco-crusade. Never mind that Karen's backyard gazebo ran floodlights bright enough to signal Mars. Emily caught worse. Her beagle, Rusty, got slapped with a $75 fine for disturbing the peace after one bark at a delivery guy. 1. I checked the HOA log myself. Karen's handwriting, timestamped at 2:17 p.m., when Emily was at work. I'd have laughed if it didn't sting so much. My shop was slow last summer, and those fines hit harder than a snapped timing belt. But when we pushed back at a meeting, Karen just smirked. Rules are rules, James. Maybe budget better. Budget. That word stuck with me like grease under my nails. I'd heard whispers, mostly from Dave, who talked too much when sober too, about Karen's HOA funds. At that same barbecue, he'd pointed at her pristine lawn and muttered, 10 grand for landscaping? My ass. Those shrubs came from Home Depot's discount bin. I'd brushed it off then, too busy keeping my shop afloat. But after the coffee stunt, it nagged me. Why was Karen so desperate to control everything? Why target Emily, who'd only called her out once for padding the HOA budget? And what were those detectives, Tom and Laura? Really after when they met Emily about that vandalism case. I started digging, not with a shovel but with the kind of stubborn I save for rusted bolts. My buddy Mike, a retired accountant who'd rather crunch numbers than fish, had an old HOA ledger from before Karen's reign. I swung by his place, a split level off Chinden with more golf trophies than sense. Mike flipped through the pages, his glasses slipping. Look at this, he said, pointing to a line. $10,000 for landscaping enhancements. Dated 6 months after Karen took over. No receipts, no vendor names, just her signature, bold as her nerve. That's not sloppy, Mike said. That's shady. 10 grand could redo my shop's lift system, not by a few bushes. I felt that itch again, the one that says you're onto something broken. Karen's grip wasn't just about power. It was personal. Emily had been her biggest thorn since that HOA meeting last fall. Picture it. Karen droning about community beautification fees while Emily, 5 rows back, raised her hand. Why is the budget up $5,000 when our sidewalks are cracking? She'd asked, calm but loud. The room went quiet. Karen's face twitched like she'd bitten a lemon. Complex finances, she'd snapped. But Emily didn't back down. Then explain it. I'd been there, grinning like a kid watching his sister dunk on the school bully. Karen never forgave her. The fines got worse, Rusty's barking, Emily's unapproved mailbox color. Then the coffee attack. Coincidence? Not a chance. I thought about those detectives. Tom and Laura weren't just grabbing lattes when Karen went ballistic. They'd been asking Emily about the HOA sucks vandalism on Karen's garage. Emily wasn't a suspect. She was at work when it happened, clocked in at her dental office. So why was Karen so quick to point fingers? And why escalate to assault in front of 2 cops? Either she was dumber than her bylaws or she was desperate. My money was on desperate. Karen Ings. She'd planned the coffee stunt to shut Emily up, make her look unstable. Classic Karen. Hit first, play victim later. I needed more. Late one night, after closing my shop, I did something stupid, call it mechanic's instinct. Karen's house was dark, her gazebo glowing like a tacky UFO. I didn't break in, relax, I'm not that dumb. But her curbside trash was fair game. Nothing but junk. Takeout containers, a cracked wine glass. But then I saw it. A strip mall flyer with her handwriting. Meet at 10. Strip mall. Keep it quiet. No names, no details. My gut twisted. Karen wasn't just fining us to death. She was meeting someone shady, and not for book club. I drove to the strip mall off Fairview, a rundown spot with a vape shop and a nail salon. Parked in my truck, lights off, I waited. At 9:58 p.m., Karen's SUV rolled in, her bumper sticker screaming, live, laugh, love, like it was mocking me. A guy in a cheap blazer climbed out of a beat-up van, tall, twitchy, with a man bun that screamed midlife crisis. They talked fast, Karen gesturing like she was scolding a dog. I couldn't hear, but I saw her hand him a thick envelope. Cash? Papers? My phone's zoom sucked, but I snapped a blurry shot. They split after 5 minutes, Karen peeling out like she'd robbed a bank. Back home, I stared at that photo, my kitchen clock ticking past midnight. The guy's van had a logo, barely legible, Greenscape Solutions, landscaping, huh? Same as her $10,000 budget line. Karen wasn't just a control freak. She was playing dirty, and Emily's coffee bath was just the start. I leaned back, the weight of it sinking in. This wasn't about a fence or a dog. Karen was hiding something big, and I just cracked the door open. Time to kick it wide. I'm no Sherlock, but when 2 detectives start asking about my sister's vandalism case, I smell a rat, and it's wearing Karen's perfume. I'm James, the guy who'd rather torque a bolt than play detective. But after Karen Thompson turned Emily into a coffee-soaked target at the Boise Bean, I didn't have a choice. Last night, I tailed Karen to a strip mall, watching her hand a shady landscaper a fat envelope under the glow of a vape shop sign. 10 grand for landscaping in the HOA ledger, and now this? My gut said Karen wasn't just fining us into submission. She was hiding something ugly, and Emily was in her crosshairs. I sat in my truck, the engine cold, replaying that coffee shop chaos. Karen's smirk, Emily's wince, those detectives, Tom and Laura, sitting there like they'd stumbled into a soap opera. They weren't just grabbing lattes. They were onto something, and I needed to know what. I drove to the Boise PD precinct the next morning, a squat brick building off State Street that smelled like stale donuts and regret. Tom met me in the lobby, his tie still screaming clearance rack. Laura joined, her notepad already out, like she was born with it glued to her hand. Emily's okay? Tom asked, scratching his stubble. I nodded. She's tough, but I want to know why Karen's gunning for her. Laura raised an eyebrow. You think the coffee thing was personal? I snorted. Karen finds my toolbox for breathing too loud. Everything's personal with her. They exchanged a look. Not the he's crazy kind, but the he's not wrong kind. That's when they dropped the first bomb. We were meeting Emily about the vandalism at Ms. Thompson's place, Laura said, flipping her notepad. Someone spray-painted HOA sucks on her garage. October 17th. Emily was helping us with leads. Leads? My sister wasn't out here playing Nancy Drew. She worked 9 to 5 at a dental office, flossing kids' teeth, not tagging garages. She's no vandal, I said, maybe too sharp. Tom held up a hand. We know. Her alibi's solid. Clocked in at work. Security cams confirm it. So why was Karen pointing fingers? I'd seen the police report tacked to the HOA bulletin board, Karen's handwriting, claiming Emily had motive because of ongoing disputes. Disputes like what? Calling out Karen's bloated budget at a meeting? That wasn't motive, that was common sense. I leaned back, the precinct's plastic chair creaking under me. Karen's HOA reign was a masterclass in pettiness, and Emily wasn't her only target. I dug through old HOA logs after the strip mall stunt. Mike, my accountant buddy, had a stash from before Karen's takeover. Fines told a story, $300 to Mrs. Carter, 32, for her gaudy Halloween decorations. $150 to Jake, 28, for his unauthorized basketball hoop. Meanwhile, Dave, 60, got off with a warning for his overflowing trash cans. The pattern was clear. Karen hammered anyone young enough to question her, anyone who didn't bow to her clipboard. Emily, at 35, was public enemy number 1 after she'd grilled Karen about that $5,000 beautification line item last fall. I'd been there, watching Karen's face twist like she'd swallowed a wasp. Complex finances, she'd hissed, but Emily just smiled. Then simplify it. Classic M. Karen never forgave her. Back at the precinct, Laura lowered her voice. The vandalism case is trickier than it looks. We've got no prints, no witnesses, but Ms. Thompson's insistent Emily's involved. Insistent? Karen had no proof, just a grudge. I thought about that coffee attack, Karen storming in, spotting Emily with the detectives, and losing it. Why? To shut her up? Make her look unhinged? I'd seen Karen play victim before, like when she fined my truck for oil stains that turned out to be rain puddles. then cried harassment when I called her out. But assaulting someone in front of cops? That was bold even for her. You think Karen's deflecting? I asked. Tom shrugged, but his eyes said he wasn't buying Karen's sob story either. I left the precinct with more questions than answers, my head spinning like a stripped gear. If Emily wasn't a suspect, why was Karen so desperate to pin it on her? And what did that strip mall meeting have to do with it? I swung by my shop, the familiar smell of motor oil calming my nerves. My phone buzzed Mike, with a lead on the landscaper's van. Greenscape Solutions, he said, is a shell company, registered to some P.O. box, no real address. But get this, it's linked to a guy named Vince Russo, small-time contractor with a rap sheet for fraud. Fraud. Same guy I'd seen with Karen? My blurry photo didn't show his face, but that man bun was hard to miss. Mike emailed me a grainy mugshot. Yep, same guy. Vince and Karen, cozy as thieves, passing envelopes in the dark. The $10,000 landscaping line in the HOA ledger started looking less like sloppy math and more like a scam. I couldn't shake the detective's vibe either. Tom and Laura weren't just humoring Emily, they'd been digging before the coffee stunt. What if Karen knew they were sniffing around? What if that coffee toss wasn't just rage but a distraction? I'd rebuilt enough engines to know when parts didn't fit, and Karen's story was misfiring bad. She targeted Emily to silence her. Sure, but why risk it in front of cops? Unless she thought she could spin it, play the victim, discredit Emily, and keep the detectives off her trail. The woman had gall, I'd give her that. But gall wasn't bulletproof. That night, I did something dumber than tailing her to a strip mall. Karen's house was 2 blocks from mine, her gazebo glowing like a discount Vegas sign. I wasn't creeping, okay, maybe a little. Her backyard gate was open, probably from her latest landscaping delivery. I stayed in the shadows, heart thumping like a bad piston. No trash diving this time, I just watched. Then I saw her, Karen, in sweatpants, hunched over a shredder on her patio. Papers fed in, confetti spat out, her hands moving fast, like she was racing a clock. She glanced around, eyes darting, and I ducked behind her stupid topiary. My phone was dead, no photos, no proof. But I didn't need a lens to know what I saw. Karen was torching evidence, and she wasn't doing it for fun. I slipped away, pulse pounding, the spring air sharp in my lungs. Back home, I paced my kitchen, the strip mall flyer and Mike's mugshot staring at me from the counter. Karen wasn't just a petty tyrant. She was scared. Of the detectives, of Emily, of me, didn't matter. That shredder meant she was covering tracks, and I was one step closer to finding them. Karen wanted to play dirty? Fine. I'd been elbow deep in grease my whole life. Time to get messy. Karen thought she could bury her secrets in a shredder, but I've got a buddy who knows paper trails better than she knows coffee cups. I'm James, a 48-year-old mechanic who'd rather rebuild a carburetor than play HOA sleuth. But after catching Karen shredding documents in her backyard last night, I was all in. She doused my sister Emily with coffee, framed her for vandalism, and now this. Tearing up evidence like a kid hiding a bad report card. My kitchen counter was a crime scene of its own. Mike's mugshot of Vince Russo, the shady landscaper from the strip mall, that HOA ledger with its $10,000 landscaping lie, and my blurry photo of Karen's late-night deal. The Boise spring air felt heavier now, like the calm before a storm. Karen wasn't just a neighborhood tyrant. She was a cornered one, and I was about to tighten the screws. I called Mike, my retired accountant pal, who lived for numbers the way I lived for torque wrenches. His place smelled like coffee and regret, golf trophies glaring from every shelf. Bring that shredded mess, I said, referring to the bits I'd swiped from Karen's patio. Don't judge, I wore gloves. Mike spread the scraps on his dining table, a jigsaw puzzle from hell. This ain't my first rodeo, he grunted, piecing together fragments like a nerdy archaeologist. 2 hours and a pot of Folgers later, we had it. An HOA expense report, partially reconstructed, showing $50,000 funneled to Greenscape Solutions over 2 years. Not for shrubs, for consulting. Consulting what? How to scam a neighborhood. Mike whistled. This is embezzlement, plain as day. And look, he pointed to a line, Approved by K. Thompson. Karen's signature bold as her gall. That $50,000 wasn't just a number, it was blood money. Our block paid HOA dues for pothole fixes, not Karen's side hustle. I thought about her backyard gazebo, a gaudy monstrosity with fairy lights that screamed, "I'm better than you." Mike cross-checked the HOA bylaws. Yep, her gazebo violated height limits by a foot. Classic Karen. Rules for thee but not for me. I'd laughed about it once, but now it burned. That $50,000 could have fixed Emily's car when it died last winter, or kept my shop afloat during slow months. Instead, it was padding Karen's ego, maybe her bank account. And Emily? She'd been targeted ever since she called out Karen's budget at that HOA meeting. Coffee in the face wasn't random, it was punishment. I needed more than paper scraps. I swung by Dave's place, our neighbor with the overpriced grill and loose lips. His garage was open, classic rock blaring. "Dave," I said, cutting through his air guitar solo. "You knew about Karen's landscaping scam, didn't you?" He froze, beer can halfway to his mouth. "Keep it down, man," he hissed, glancing at his fence like Karen had it bugged. After some prodding, and a promise not to rat him out, Dave spilled. "She leaned on me to vote for her budget last year. Said it was for community upgrades. When I asked about the numbers, she got intense. Intense how? Like, you don't want fines, do you? Intense. Dave wasn't young like Emily, but he'd caved. Most did. Karen's HOA wasn't a board, it was a protection racket. My phone buzzed as I left Dave's. Laura, the detective, sounding clipped. "Karen filed a harassment complaint against you, James. Says you're stalking her over the coffee incident." Harassment? Me? The woman who fined my toolbox for noise was calling me the problem? Laura's tone said she wasn't buying it, but protocol meant paperwork. "Watch your step," she added. Watch my step? I'd been watching Karen's for days, and she was tap dancing on a minefield. Her complaint was a deflection, same as the coffee toss. Make us look bad, keep the heat off her. But she'd miscalculated. I wasn't Emily, ready to shrug it off. I was the guy who'd rebuilt a '67 Mustang from scrap. Karen's lies were just another rusted heap, and I had the tools to tear them apart. The HOA meeting that night was my chance. Picture a community center off Overland, fluorescent lights buzzing, folding chairs packed with neighbors too tired to care. Karen stood at the podium, her floral blouse a war cry, droning about curb appeal initiatives. I waited, Mike's reconstructed report burning a hole in my pocket. Emily was home, her cheek was healing, but she didn't need Karen's glare tonight. When Karen opened the floor for concerns, I stood. "I've got one," I said, loud enough to wake old Mr. Jenkins in the back. "Why's the HOA paying $50,000 to a shell company for consulting?" I held up the report, pages taped like a drunk quilt. The room went still. Karen's smile froze, a crack in her mask. "James," she said, voice syrupy, "budgets are complex. Maybe stick to, what is it you do? Oil changes." A few neighbors chuckled, traitors. I didn't flinch. "Complex like your gazebo breaking bylaws? Or like $50,000 vanishing to Greenscape Solutions? Signed by you." I tossed the report on a table, pages fluttering. Gasps rippled. Dave sank in his chair. Karen's eyes narrowed, her perm practically vibrating. "That's slander," she snapped. "You're obsessed. Harassing me over a little coffee misunderstanding." Misunderstanding? Emily's red cheek wasn't a typo. I kept going. "Vince Russo ring a bell? Your strip mall buddy? Got a fraud rap sheet longer than your rulebook." The room erupted. Whispers, coughs, someone muttering fraud. Karen slammed her gavel. Yes, she had a gavel, like a discount judge. "Enough. You're out of order." "Out of order? Lady, I was just getting started." But then she cracked. "You're a nobody, James. A grease monkey wannabe detective who can't mind his own business." Her voice hit a pitch that could shatter glass. Her face red as the spray paint she'd blamed on Emily. Neighbors stared, some shocked, some grinning. Karen stormed out, heels clicking, leaving her precious rulebook behind. I'd hit a nerve hard. I stayed late, answering questions from neighbors who suddenly cared. Mrs. Carter, the Halloween fine victim, patted my arm. "Keep digging, hon." I planned to. Back home, I couldn't sleep, my mind replaying Karen's meltdown. She wasn't just mad. She was scared. I stepped outside for air, the Boise night crisp, and checked my mailbox. Force of habit. Something caught my eye. A folded note, no envelope, tucked under a rock by my porch. I opened it, my gut twisting. Scrawled in Karen's unmistakable loopy handwriting. "Meet at 10 p.m. Keep it quiet." No location, no signature, just those words, sharp as a blade. 10 p.m. where? With who? Karen wasn't inviting me for tea. She was baiting me or warning me. Either way, I wasn't backing down. I cracked her armor. Time to break it open. I've spent my life fixing broken things. Engines mostly, but Karen Thompson's lies were a machine I was ready to dismantle. I'm James, a 48-year-old Boise mechanic who'd rather face a seized piston than another HOA meeting. But after last night's showdown, I had Karen on the ropes. Her $50,000 HOA scam was exposed. Her composure cracked like cheap paint, and that cryptic note, "Meet at 10 p.m. Keep it quiet," sat on my counter like a live grenade. No location, just her loopy handwriting, taunting me. Karen wasn't inviting me to negotiate. She was setting a trap or covering her ass. Either way, I tailed her to a strip mall, watched her shred evidence, and called her out in front of the neighborhood. My sister Emily was still nursing a coffee-stained ego, and Karen thought she could scare me off? Lady, I've rebuilt transmissions in thunderstorms. I was done playing defense. The note gnawed at me all day, its vagueness a dare. 10 p.m. where? My gut screamed, strip mall. Same spot I'd seen her with Vince Russo, the man-bun fraudster tied to her fake landscaping company. I didn't tell Emily. She'd call me reckless, and she wasn't wrong. Instead, I texted Mike, my accountant buddy, who'd pieced together Karen's shredded scam like a puzzle savant. "Check Greenscape's filings," I said. "Anything new?" Mike grumbled. Golf season was his religion, but promised to dig. I grabbed my phone, a flashlight, and a cheap recorder I used for shop notes. No gun, no knife. I'm a wrench guy, not Rambo. But if Karen was meeting Vince again, I'd catch her words, not just her shadow. By 9:30 p.m., I was parked at the Fairview Strip Mall, my truck tucked behind a dumpster that reeked of old lo mein. The vape shop's neon buzzed, casting a sickly glow. I killed the engine, my recorder ready, and waited. At 9:57, Karen's SUV rolled in, her live, laugh, love sticker mocking the night. Vince's van followed, its Greenscape logo faded like his conscience. They parked near a shuttered warehouse at the lot's edge, doors rusted, windows dark. I crept closer, staying low, the Boise chill biting my neck. Karen stepped out, her perm a silhouette, voice sharp. Vince looked twitchy, his man bun bobbing as he paced. I hit record, praying the battery held. "You said this was clean," Vince hissed, loud enough to carry. "Cops are asking questions." Karen snapped back. "Keep your voice down, idiot. It's handled." Handled? My pulse kicked up. I crouched behind a stack of pallets, recorder humming. Karen kept going, her words a gold mine. The vandalism was perfect, points to that nosy little hygienist. "Nobody's looking at us." Hygienist? Emily. My fist clenched. Karen had staged the HOA sucks graffiti to frame Emily. Silence her budget questions. The coffee attack? Same playbook. Make Emily look unhinged. Discredit her with the detectives. I guessed it, but hearing it burned like a fresh weld. Vince wasn't sold. Her brother's sniffing around. That meeting last night. He's got papers. Karen laughed, cold as the warehouse walls. James? He's a grease monkey with a hero complex. Let him dig. He'll bury himself. Bury myself? Try again. I steadied the recorder, catching every word. Karen admitted skimming $50,000 through Greenscape, funneling it to Vince for consulting while she pocketed half. Her gazebo, that tacky shrine, was built on our dues. I wanted to storm out, shove that recorder in her face, but I waited. Patience isn't my thing. Ask any engine I've overtorqued. But this was bigger than pride. Then it went sideways. Headlights swept the lot. 2 unmarked sedans, silent as sharks. Detectives Tom and Laura, moving fast, badges glinting. I tipped them off yesterday, texting Laura about Vince's rap sheet and the strip mall meet. Didn't expect them this quick. Police! Hands up! Tom bellowed. Vince yelped, dropping the envelope. Cash. From the look of it. Karen bolted, her heels slipping on gravel, screaming, "This is harassment." She didn't get far. In a twist straight out of a bad sitcom, she tripped over a crate, sprawling face first with a squawk that'd wake the dead. I bit my lip to keep from laughing, recorder still rolling. Laura cuffed Vince, who was already whining about deals. Tom hauled Karen up, her perm now a bird's nest, her blouse ripped. "You set me up!" she shrieked, glaring at the shadows. Maybe at me. I stayed hidden, heart pounding, as they loaded her into a sedan. The warehouse lot cleared fast, red and blue lights fading. I slipped back to my truck, recorder hot in my pocket. I caught it all, Karen's confession, her vandalism plot, her scam with Vince. Emily was clear and Karen was cooked. Or so I thought. At the precinct by midnight, the air was thick with coffee and chaos. Tom met me in a hallway, looking like he'd aged a decade. "Good tip," he said, nodding at my recorder. I handed it over, every word backed up on my phone, just in case. Laura joined, her notepad finally retired. "Vince flipped faster than a pancake," she said. "Says Karen planned the graffiti to frame Emily, keep her from digging into the budget. Coffee stunt was her idea too. Thought it'd make Emily look unstable." I nodded, not surprised but still pissed. "And the money?" Laura smirked. "Greenscape's a front. Karen siphoned $50,000, split it with Vince. We've got bank records, thanks to your accountant." They played my recording in an interrogation room, Karen's voice tinny but damning. I watched through a window as she sat, cuffed, face like a storm cloud. Laura leaned in, reading charges. Embezzlement, vandalism, assault. Karen's eyes darted, searching for an out. Couldn't resist. I stepped to the door, catching her gaze. "Read the bylaws, Karen," I said, voice low. "Fraud's not in 'em." Her glare could have melted steel, but I grinned. After years of her fines, her rules, her smug little smirk, I'd flipped the script. Emily was safe, the neighborhood was free, and Karen was done. Or was she? Back home, dawn breaking over Boise's foothills, I replayed the night. Vince was singing, the money was traced, and Karen's gazebo dreams were toast. But something nagged me, like a loose bolt I couldn't find. Karen's outburst at the raid. "You set me up," wasn't just panic. She'd looked into the shadows, like she knew I was there. That note, "Meet at 10 p.m., felt too neat, too staged. Had she baited me, expecting me to show? Was she counting on getting caught to play a bigger card? I shook it off, exhaustion talking. But as I crashed on my couch, the recorder's weight in my pocket felt heavier than victory. Karen was down, not out, and I had a bad feeling she wasn't done swinging. Karen Thompson's empire of fines and fairy lights was crumbling. But I've learned one thing fixing engines. Even a busted machine can throw a final spark. I'm James, a 48-year-old Boise mechanic who just caught Karen red-handed. Her $50,000 HOA scam exposed. Her vandalism plot to frame my sister Emily recorded. Her coffee-throwing tantrum a precinct footnote. Last night's warehouse raid had her in cuffs, spitting venom as detectives Tom and Laura hauled her off. My recorder's confession was bulletproof. Karen admitted staging the HOA sucks graffiti and assaulting Emily to silence her budget questions. Vince Russo, her man-bun sidekick, flipped faster than a bad alternator, spilling their greenscape fraud. I'd grinned at Karen in the interrogation room, tossing her bylaws back in her face. Done deal, right? Wrong. Karen wasn't the type to go quietly. She'd claw like a cornered cat, and that cryptic "meet at 10 p.m. note still itched like a burr under my saddle. 2 weeks later, April 25, 2025, I got the news. Karen, out on bail faster than you can say entitled, slapped me and Emily with a lawsuit, defamation and emotional distress, $100,000, filed in Boise's district court. Emotional distress? The woman who'd find my toolbox for noise was crying victim? I laughed, then groaned. Lawyers aren't cheap, and my shop wasn't exactly rolling in cash. Emily took it harder, her usual spark dimmed. She's never gonna stop, is she? She asked, sipping coffee at my kitchen table. Her cheek long healed, but the sting still fresh. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. Karen wanted a fight, and I'd been scrapping with rust and grease my whole life. She'd picked the wrong grease monkey. I hired Sarah, a lawyer with a ponytail and a smirk sharper than my socket wrench. Her office, a cramped spot off Main Street, smelled like ink and ambition. Karen's case is thin, Sarah said, flipping through the complaint. She's banking on you settling to avoid fees. Settle? Over my dead torque converter. Sarah dug deeper, pulling Karen's past like I'd pull a spark plug. Turns out, Karen's early retirement from HR wasn't voluntary. She'd been fired in 2020 from a Philly firm for bullying staff. Lawsuit followed, settled out of court, sealed tight. Sarah's grin was feral. Sealed doesn't mean buried. I've got contacts. By the next day, she had affidavits from ex-coworkers. Karen intimidated subordinates, fudged expense reports, played favorites. Sound familiar? Her HOA reign was just Philly 2.0, same game, new zip code. The hearing hit on May 3rd, a gray morning in a Boise courtroom that smelled like polish and bad decisions. Karen sat across the aisle, her perm deflated, her lawyer a slick type who probably charged by the syllable. Neighbors packed the gallery. Dave, Mrs. Carter, even old Mr. Jenkins, awake for once. Emily sat beside me, chin up, whispering, "She's toast, right?" I hoped so, but Karen's glare said she wasn't out of tricks. Sarah stood, all 5'4" of her radiating pitbull energy, and laid it out. "Ms. Thompson claims defamation," she said, voice clear. "But my clients exposed her embezzlement. $50,000 from HOA dues, funneled to a shell company, Greenscape Solutions." She played my warehouse recording, Karen's voice echoing. The vandalism was perfect, points to that nosy hygienist. Gasps rippled. Karen's lawyer squirmed. Sarah wasn't done. She dropped Mike's reconstructed ledger. $50,000, signed by Karen, and Vince's signed confession, nailing her for fraud and vandalism. The coffee assault? Assault charge pending, backed by the Boise Beans security cam. Karen's lawyer tried spinning it. My client was provoked. Sarah shut him down, showing Karen's HR firing. Ms. Thompson has a history of bullying, documented in Philadelphia. This lawsuit is her latest tantrum. The judge, a no-nonsense Boise native with a beard like a lumberjack, leaned forward. Ms. Thompson, care to explain? Karen stammered, her victim act crumbling. They're lying. I'm the victim. The judge's eyebrow said he'd heard that one before. Then came the twist. Sarah had saved the best for last. A lien on Karen's house, filed by Greenscape's creditors. Seems Vince, desperate to cut a deal, revealed Karen hadn't paid him his full cut. The gazebo, financed on credit she never settled, now repossessed. I bit back a laugh as Sarah projected a photo. Karen's backyard, fairy lights gone. A bulldozer hauling away her tacky shrine. The gallery buzzed. Dave snorted so loud the bailiff glared. The judge ruled fast. Karen's lawsuit dismissed, $75,000 fine for HOA fraud, ordered to resign from the board. And Ms. Thompson, he added, pay the court costs. Karen's face was a storm cloud, but she nodded, silent for once. I caught her eye as she left. No smirk now, just defeat. That weekend, our cul-de-sac threw a block party, the kind Boise does best. Folding tables, lukewarm beer, kids chasing dogs. Mrs. Carter brought her famous potato salad. Dave grilled enough burgers to feed Idaho. Neighbors joked about President Emily, crowning her with a paper tiara she wore with a grin. I stood back, sipping a Coors, watching Rusty the Beagle steal a hot dog. The lot where Karen's gazebo once stood was cleared, replaced by a community garden, funded by recovered HOA funds. Tomatoes, zucchini, maybe some spike carrots. It wasn't just dirt. It was us taking our street back. Karen's house was dark. For sale sign fresh. Word was she'd moved to her sister's, dodging glares and fines she couldn't pay. I wandered to my garage later, the familiar smell of oil grounding me. My dad's old toolbox sat in the corner, dented from years of fixes. He'd been a mechanic too, taught me to tackle what's broken, no matter how stubborn. Karen's reign was like a blown gasket, messy, but fixable if you kept at it. I'd started this for Emily, for the red mark on her cheek, but it became bigger, about our block, our fight. Karen thought she could bully us forever, but she forgot one thing. A neighborhood's tougher than any rulebook. I raised my beer to the empty street. No more Karens, I said, and meant it. Loved Karen's downfall? Smash that like button, share this with your crew, and comment your own Karen story below.